Greetings, friends! In celebration of the fact that the Thursday Night Nachos Defining Evolution series is now going to be up on the Creation Club website at thecreationclub.com, we are presenting this special presentation of the summary of the entire series. To check out the series, you can find it at the Creation Club starting now, or you can search at bitoforange.com and find the archives. And in the meantime, please enjoy this, the epic Evolution Fail Slideshow. My friends, and welcome to the very first and sure to be remembered as historic presentation of the epic Evolution Fail Slideshow, subtitled, If You Understand Evolution, Then You Know Why It's Wrong, and then subtitled, Chuck D and the New Monkey Band. Just remember, it was your friends here at bitoforange.com that brought to you the world's first clear and useful definition for Darwinian evolution. The definition of evolution is created by coming to a clear understanding of what evolution is and what story it intends to tell. We start with the Darwinian Tree of Life. The Darwinian Tree of Life is the history of all life on Earth, according to Darwinian evolution. In order to grow this tree, Darwinian evolution must be four things. 1. Evolution is something to do with living things. 2. Evolution is something about life changing over time. 3. Evolution is something which is intended to explain the origin of different kinds of plants and animals. 4. Evolution tells a story wherein all living things arose through past common ancestors, until, far back enough in time, we reach a first universal common ancestor, making the history of life on Earth a big tree of life. Or, going forward in time, it explains how simple things like bacteria became worms, which became fish, which became lizards, which became rodents, which became primates, which became humans. In order to give rise to and grow the Darwinian Tree of Life, thereby accounting for all of the plant and animal kinds that exist now and which have existed in the past, evolution is an unguided, natural process which increases the genetic information in an organism, creating new genes which did not previously exist. These new genes then cause an increase in physical complexity and associated behavior, both of which increases the organism's ability to survive and pass on these traits to offspring. This definition takes into account the Darwinian Tree of Life and the basic story which evolution is intending to tell. We then took this understanding of the evolutionary model and examined the proposed mechanisms of evolution to see if any of them could cause the Darwinian Tree of Life to grow and create new kinds of plants and animals. First, with consideration to the title of Darwin's book, we looked at natural selection. However, natural selection cannot be the origin of any species, because it only removes variation from a species. It does not add any. Darwin said as much in his book, and so this rejection of natural selection as a mechanism of evolution comes from Darwin's own writings, as well as a clear understanding of what it is and what evolution is claiming to do. Next, we looked at genetic drift and migration. But this mechanism is literally just moving existing things from one place to another. Migration cannot be a mechanism of evolution because it cannot cause a new species, gene, feature, or behavior to come into existence. Because it is such a popular definition of and proposed mechanism for evolution, we looked at changes in allele frequency. However, changes in allele frequency cannot be evolution, as they cannot create new genes, variations, or species. The ultimate failure of this proposed mechanism is that it is a statistical change, not a genetic one. This is mere census information, and cannot be evolution, nor even a mechanism of evolution. We looked at descent with modification. This was rejected because it is so ambiguous that it has no meaning. All this term can mean is change over time, which doesn't say enough to separate the origin of species from the extinction of a species, and thus can't be said to be evolution. Furthermore, we acknowledge that many changes from one generation to the next can result from shuffling existing genes, or losing existing genes, neither of which are evolutionary changes because they do not grow the Darwinian Tree of Life. We looked at vestigial organs and structures and found that while they are listed on most textbooks and websites intending to promote evolution, these are literally the evidence of the loss of structures and functions, which is the exact opposite of what Darwinian evolution is intending to explain. We spent considerable time looking at the favorite mechanism for making not only new kinds of plants and animals, but comic book superheroes: mutations. Mutations are so unlikely to create new genetic information, and so much more likely to cause damage to existing genes, that the creation of a new gene by mutations is essentially impossible. We've never seen a beneficial mutation which adds information to a genome, and have only seen many examples of mutations causing harm to existing genes. The odds of mutations making a new functional gene is far less than the odds of flipping a coin heads up 1,000 times in a row. Information requires a mind, and genetics, DNA in the machines of every cell, are packed full of information. Thus, evolution cannot be the cause, but rather, in the beginning, God created. After we'd examined all of the proposed mechanisms of evolution, we looked at more alleged evidence for evolution, starting with fossils. The problem, we discovered, is that the fossils are not found in the Darwinian order, and have to be arranged that way according to evolutionary theory. The ages of the rocks and the fossils are based on circular reasoning, wherein the rocks date the fossils, and the fossils date the rocks, and the entire enterprise once again requires you to accept evolutionary theory as fact before you begin the process, so that evolution can be used as evidence for evolution. Even worse, the fossils show no transitional forms, thus showing no evolution happening, even if the deep time evolutionary dates are accepted. They also show stasis, meaning things staying the same for long periods of time unchanged, which again is evidence of no evolution happening. Finally, the existence of plants and animals called living fossils prove that even if you accept the evolutionary dates, you cannot construct an evolutionary sequence from the fossils because we can't know from the fossils when an animal was on Earth or not, since if you accept the evolutionary dates, they can be living on Earth for millions of years without leaving a fossil. The next bit of alleged evidence for evolution was molecular clocks. Some people try to claim that DNA changes at a constant and predictable rate, but this was shown to be false for several reasons. First, because DNA decays so quickly, we have to extrapolate far into the past where no evidence exists, thus making the entire concept speculation with no possibility of evidence. Next, there is no agreement between clocks, and the same species can yield different dates depending on what you date and what assumptions you bring to the table. The biggest objection, in my humble opinion, is the fossil record. Evolutionary theory states that the fossil record shows species living on Earth unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. But clearly, if that were possible, it would prove that DNA does not change at regular and predictable rates. Finally, we looked at a textbook classic piece of support for evolutionary theory, homologous features. These are features believed to be shared by different species because that feature was passed down from a common evolutionary ancestor which had that feature. But again, we learned the double-edged sword which is evolution, as we saw that a common feature could not be called homologous unless we already believed that the species in question had a common ancestor with the feature in question. Thus, far from being evidence for evolution, we see that evolution and a particular evolutionary sequence must already be accepted before the common feature can even be called homologous. At the end of the road, we learned that the proposed mechanisms of Darwinian evolution cannot cause evolution to happen. When properly understood, evolution is seen to be intellectually bankrupt, a collection of logical fallacies and wishful thinking. It has no observable evidence that supports it. It must be used as evidence for itself, and whatever else you might believe, when understood properly, evolution fails on its own merits. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Who's got two thumbs and knows his Shakespeare? This guy! Haha! Thanks for watching, everybody! This chapter and now all of the chapters in our Defining Evolution series are up on our new website, abitoforange.com, so go check that out. Thanks for liking and subscribing. We'll see you next time, and happy nachos.